Puro is such a personal story to you and your own OCD diagnosis more than 8 years ago. And you're really intentional about creating that outline and setting it down until you were ready to write it. How did you ultimately, when that time was?
Yeah, I guess that's one of those things. It's just an intuitive process, right? So I wrote it when I was going through it, like you said, and I knew that I wanted to write it in that space where I was past everything and I wasn't like in the middle of it, but I also wanted to kind of do it soon after that, where I'd moved on with my life. I didn't want to be so far removed where I was so far gone that our memories as humans are a tricky thing. So sometimes you just start forgetting things, and I wanted to write it while I was in that space where I could kind of remember everything and access everything and remember the conversations and remember what was happening in my life, but not be so far removed from it that I had sort of just completely moved on and sort of started forgetting things. So for me, that time kind of came, yeah, right, kind of like during the pandemic. A lot of it was that was a very self-reflective time for most of us,
Mm.
anyways. So I'd written something else and was trying to thinking about what to write next. And I mean, how did I know? I guess the way I knew is that I found that outline that I had written and I sort of read everything, and it didn't really trigger me. It wasn't sort of,
Mm.
I was just reading the stuff, and it didn't hurt to read it. And I was like, oh, I think I'm in a pretty good place. I've moved on, and I feel like I can really write about this from an objective place.
Yeah.
It's obviously there's going to be personal bias. It's my own story, but as objective as possible, I felt like I was in that space.
And that opening scene in the film is so powerful, and it makes you think that it's going in one direction, but you take audiences on a completely different journey. How early on in the writing process did you know you wanted to begin the film with almost these kind of horror elements and kind of
Yeah,
divert expectations?
from the very beginning, I knew that I wanted to do that because I mean the OCD is so misunderstood, right? And
Mm.
so that's how it's normally depicted in the media: is you either have the serial killer who has OCD or the quirky friend, or so I knew that I really wanted to subvert audience expectations and that I wanted to set it up thinking that, and then very quickly show like, oh no, that's not at all. He's just a normal human who's dealing with OCD. So I wanted to try to kind of flip it on its head and subvert expectations, and that was an intentional choice from the outset. I would say, I think from the first draft, that never changed, that opening and that twist.
Mm. Something
Yeah,
else that you've done so brilliantly with this film is the ways that you're able to interject moments of levity and humor, which feels like such a really good slice of life that, even in the
right.
darkest times, you can't help but laugh. And I think I was so engrossed by what was happening between Cooper and Emily and all these different characters that I missed it in the first watch, but a testament to you and the writing that with every new watch, you learn something new and you observe something new. How early on
Mm.
did you know you wanted to include that juxtaposition and contrast? And why was that so important to you as a filmmaker?
Oh, I love that because I think that everything that you just outlined was a very specific choice in the writing and in the creation of the project. But I think that's just really true to life.
Mhm.
I just I mean, we as human beings, it's all messy, and we laugh when we're not supposed to, and it's a lot of it's a release of energy. And I remember I had a professor at drama school who used to always talk about that as an actor, was like finding those moments, and she would share anecdotes about um, a story where after her mother died and her sister and her had to go to the mortuary, and something happened. I think one of them farted when they were like looking at their mother's corpse, and all of a sudden they started laughing, and the mortician was looking at them like weirded out. That's just such a true to life moment. I think that
Mhm.
in the darkest of times, you're inherently sort of like looking for the light. And so when those things naturally come, and I knew that I wanted there to be humor in the film, and I knew that I didn't want it to be ha ha humor. I knew that I wanted that humor to really come from circumstance and to come from the life,
Yeah.
and to come from sort of like situational humor that was happening. And so I tried to be very conscious of that in the writing. Whenever it's dealing with really heavy issues, it's dealing with taboo issues, but I knew that I don't do bleak, and I didn't want it to be bleak, that I wanted the tone to be like bittersweet yet hopeful. And so in order to achieve that, whenever in the writing I would feel like there was like it was kind of being heavy for a while, I'd make sure that I kind of would mine it to sort of like find some sort of like life moments around there that they could stop and laugh, because that's OCD too. I mean, people with OCD are incredibly self-aware people. And so I think that that goes hand in hand with them, even though they're dealing with really heavy issues. like you have like a dual brain. You're also completely
Hmm.
aware of it at the same time. So a lot of people with OCD are able to come out of it even when they know that they're really stuck in a theme and they're really stuck on a spin cycle of anxiety. They are able to still like step away from that and like laugh at the reality of their own, because you're also experiencing it, but at the same time you're also piercingly self-aware at how insane it all is, but you just can't stop it. So that's kind of the nature of the illness. So I thought that matching tonally with the film, the experience of
Yeah.
OCD, you know, would be a good juxtaposition for the film.
It takes audiences on such a wild roller coaster of emotions throughout. And there's
Right.
also such an openness in which you collaborated with your ensemble, particularly Daniel and Hope, and allowing them to bring their real life relationship into these characters as much as they were comfortable with. And there's so much discovery that was happening when the camera was rolling, which really ties back beautifully with the themes of vulnerability and how the greatest form and how that's the greatest form of courage. Did that process of creating and fostering that environment differ between Daniel and Hope, since Daniel came in having done so much research and also
Mm.
had you as a resource as opposed to Hope, who came in and was doing a lot of that discovery in the moment?
Yeah, that was something that we really spoke to. That was a creative decision on the process. And you can talk to Daniel, I hope, more about this. But Daniel was getting, his character was getting diagnosed, and he was sort of just like reading everything furiously that he could, everything that he could find on OCD. So I gave him everything. Whereas Hope's character was the partner of that character who had her own struggles going on in her own life, and she wasn't as invested and didn't know as much about OCD. So we actually made a conscious decision to not have Hope, like I didn't want her to read anything about OCD, and I didn't want her to really like talk to Daniel about it. And I wanted to sort of separate them in the creative process. And they're a real life couple in real life, and they live together. And I have these conversations about like, listen, when you're doing your research, like don't talk to Hope about it at all, and like keep yourselves like completely separate, so that when we get on set and we're filming, everything's going to be kind of like found out in the process of the movie for Hope. Uh, and so that was a creative decision from the beginning, and I think that it worked, and it ended up working very well for their
Mm-hmm.
performances and for the film as a whole.
Yeah, you touched upon this already, but community is such a central theme within the story and how we all need the help of others. For you as a filmmaker, who've been the people in your own life who've held that space for you in your creative endeavors, inspired your own journey?
Oh my gosh, so many people. You know, I'm literally standing here right now today on the shoulders of giants. I mean, luckily a lot of them got to come and be a part of this film.
Mm,
There's a ton of people in the film that I've known for a really long time. Starting with Daniel, we went to college. We've known each other for 20 years. Um, a lot of my professors from school show up in the film, like people that I wanted to work with. A lot of the therapists, and Steve was a mentor of mine in school. Um, my creative partner Ricky Fosheim, who we grew up together since we were kids. He's been there every step of the way, and he's been a huge champion of mine since the beginning. And he was on this project with me as a producer and as a DP. So I was literally surrounded by so many of those people like Jeffrey A. Baker, people like Isaac
mm,
Nippert, people like Clint James, and these people that have been in my life as not just creative collaborators, but just life collaborators and all things. To be able, that's one of the funnest things about when you're producing and directing and making a
yeah.
movie and you're making an ensemble piece, is you get to really look at it and be like, who do I get to call? Who do I want to call from the past that I haven't seen in a long time? And it was really really formative to have so many of these. It was very meta. There was a lot about this film that was very meta, and that was sort of intentional with a lot of this. We wanted to kind of have a meta approach to the making of this film for a lot of reasons, but one of them that was cool was connecting with people, some people I haven't seen in 20 years, that I was able to pick up the phone. And I was incredibly fortunate, and I feel grateful that everybody said yes to me, and everybody was able to come out and do this film. And it's been a really full circle
Mm.
experience for me.
There's something so special when you get a group of collaborators that you're friends with to create a project. And you also have a cameo in the film. Did you go into the writing
Yeah,
process knowing that you wanted to start in that part as well? How did that come to fruition?
yeah. Well, too. I mean, I kicked around the playing the lead as well, but then we had a producing partner who had to fall off the project before we were going in, and I'm wearing so many hats on the project that we decided that that probably wouldn't be good. But again, I've been an actor for a really long
Yeah.
time, and I wanted to be in the sandbox playing with everybody. but also we really wanted to have like in the OCD groups, I really wanted to have real life people with OCD in the group. So there's other people in the groups as well that are sufferers, and so I knew I wanted to have that part. And I thought that there was again something kind of poetic and the juxtaposition that I'm somebody in the group who's just getting diagnosed, and I'm lost, and having the character that's sort of based on me be the one helping my
Yeah.
character. There was just something like meta and kind of like cool about that approach that I thought was fun, and just a little bit of an Easter egg. And also being a real life sufferer, I just felt like it was right for me to sort of play that part. And yeah, so that's why that happened.
I also want to take you back to that moment at South by Southwest during the audience Q&A where a young lady who has OCD shared her own personal experience and how this project has impacted her. What has it been like for you getting to see that response from the audience in such a visceral way, and the impact that you're creating will continue to create as it makes its global digital release?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, that part of it has just been awesome, like in the truest sense of that word. Not just that experience at South by, but our whole theatrical run here in LA, the in-person
Mm,
sort of cathartic experience of this film has been why I think a lot of us as artists, why we create artists, to hopefully create community and to have people be seen in representation and all of these things. But we've just had really sort of like gobsmacking experiences that have been completely unexpected. Like in our theatrical experience last week, we had somebody who showed up to the theater, and he was there because his two daughters have OCD, and he was struggling and wanted to try to figure out more about it and how to relate. And at the end of the film, he raised his hand and he shared that he found out through watching the film that he has OCD, and that he never knew that it could
mm,
be this mental form of it. He only knew of it as hand washing and physical stuff, and his daughters have physical manifestation. But he realized, he thought it came from his wife, and he was like, I'm realizing that that they got it from me. And he had this really powerful share, and he was able to come up on stage at the Q&A and connect with the therapists who were there, and he's getting into recovery treatment. And I've had experiences of people reaching out who have seen the film, and they were able to get the right treatment and understand what their children are going through and what their partners are going through. And so it's been really, really cool to have a project that's out into the world that's bigger than just entertainment.
mhm.
That's hope, you know, first and foremost, I hope it is entertaining. And I do think that you can watch this film and have no association to
Yeah.
OCD or mental health whatsoever, and just have an entertaining movie first and foremost. But I do think that it also does kind of work as this educational document for people that are either getting diagnosed or if they have a loved one that's getting diagnosed. And it's something that I think the whole cast and crew is incredibly proud of. I know I am, but I think that everybody is really proud to be part of a piece of art that's
Yeah.
sort of like transcending just entertainment and is sort of connecting to people. And like how rare it is, and I don't think it's lost on me going through this experience right now, how rare it is to have a piece of art like that that's greater than the sum of its parts and can really like help people in a meaningful way. It's beautiful. So it's been a really, really humbling, beautiful experience to be a part of.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I feel like you're just saying, it has created such an impact amongst audiences. I got one final question for you. Outside of Puro, there's so many elements and different facets to your craft. What's next for you?
Yeah, so I'm working on a film called Just Never Leave. It's a film that I wrote and was working on a little bit before going into Pure O, and now we're circling back on that. And that is a romantic drama crime thriller that's set in Buenos Aires about an expat American punk rocker who falls in love with a trans woman and is pulling crime jobs in South America. So hopefully we're going to go into production on that by end of year is the goal.